Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Coast to Coast on the Her Hoop Stats Podcast Network. I'm your co-host Crina Mustafa alongside Calvin Wetzel, and today is going to be all about the WNBA Finals. The Liberty were able to force a game 4, much against what we had discussed on last week's podcast. We're also going to get into our Player of the Week later, but Cal, you ready?
Always ready. Let's go, Cree.
All right. Well, first and foremost, before we get into any WNBA finals discourse, just want to say, we hope Chelsea Gray is okay. That looked like a pretty scary injury near the end of game 3. And just per reports and the unnecessary footage that ESPN provided on TV and on social media, it didn't look like she could walk on her own. She was on crutches. So we don't know what the update is as of now, but we do hope she's okay because, it always sucks to see players get hurt, and she's a very important piece to this Aces team.
Yeah, I would love to be wrong. We're recording on Tuesday morning, so who knows when we get the official report, but it doesn't really feel like she's going to be playing again in this series. Like I said, I really hope I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Because that is just like, it doesn't matter who you're rooting for. Like, you don't want to see that. You don't want to see stars or anyone go out and it's just someone who's like as important as she has been to the Aces team. Like, you hate it as a basketball fan and as a person. Like, I was in so much pain, and I hate that. So would love to somehow see, how it looked not really be what ends up happening, and see her come back in this finals would be great. But it's kind of hard to see that happening, unfortunately.
Yeah. So we wish her all the best, and we are currently still waiting for the update as of Tuesday morning. But all right, let's get into the series itself because the Liberty avoided the sweep. They came out with a pretty solid win against the Las Vegas Aces in game 3. So what was the biggest adjustment that you saw from the Liberty in game 3 to get them that win?
I think, the defensive matchups that they switched up. They had guards, Sabrina or Sloot, depending on that some of each guarding Kia Stokes, which, like we talked about last time, when Kia has the ball, I didn't think they had necessarily done a great job on her, but when she doesn't have the ball, you really should be using whoever's on her as just a sort of a rover and a help defender, and I think that allowed them to do that. They had Stewie on Chelsea Gray. And then they had the biggest one, Benajelani on Jackie Young. We saw Jackie sort of go out. We were talking about her as a X Factor possible Finals MVP. She only had, what was it, 8 or 9 points in this game,
Yeah, she had 9
and
points.
I think that's a huge credit to Benajelani and also, yeah, obviously Sandy Brondello for switching up those matchups, which I think worked out great. Now, if you're Becky Hammond, like you heard her in the post game press conference say, they switched matchups and that really shouldn't make up a 40-point gap. I think it was, or whatever it was, from the margin in game 2 to the margin in game 3. And she's right. Like, no, we talked about this in the last podcast too. There's no one thing that you can really do to make up a 40-point gap. So it was more than that. Obviously, shots went in. They really came out. We'll talk about this with a lot more energy in front of their home crowd. They were just more locked in. But in terms of actual schematics, the matchups I think played a big part, and definitely something that we'll have to see how the Aces kind of hit back in game 4.
Yeah, and I think for me, even on the defensive side of the floor, it very much felt like more of a team effort. Like it felt like every single Liberty player that was on the court was extremely active, like including like Courtney Vandersloot, who we talked about, who struggled within the first 2 games of this series. But I thought she was way more active defensively. Like she got a couple of hands on the balls when the Aces were in their on the offensive side of the court. And then also just like the laney hustle defense, like that one play where she like runs all like throughout the court to catch up with Jackie and prevent that layup. Like it was little things like that everybody was just doing their job. It felt like they were communicating better and nobody let up. I think that was one of the biggest things that I was keeping my eye on, because the second that the Liberty let up that defensive intensity, the Aces could have ran away with it so quick, but it never happened. And I like that I saw that, because that's kind of been an issue that they've struggled with throughout the season, where they'll either start out the first half strong and then finish the second half kind of sloppy and just not with where they were in the first half, or it'll be the other way around where they start out the first half sloppy and then they pick it up in the second, but it's not enough to fix whatever happened in the first half. So it's nice to see that energy throughout all 4 quarters. And I'm sure that's something that Coach Sandy was really harping on and probably really likes to take away from that. But yeah, Jackie Young, we talked about her. She had a pretty quiet 9 points after, we were calling her the finals MVP in the first 2 games of the series, posting up 26 and 24. So to get 9 points from a player who started out the series as on fire as she did, I think that was key. Even Asia had 16 points. And, even with Asia Wilson, because, she is the MVP of this team in general, and the Aces can win games even if she doesn't hit 20 points. The fact that they were able to just really focus on each of their matchups, I think went really well for them. And then you saw that the offense just kind of flowed after that. Like, I know that's such a saying that gets said over and over that like good defense leads to good offense, but it's so true. And I feel like this game was a perfect example of that.
Yeah, it's true, obviously, in terms of getting out in transition, you get stops and you get those opportunities. And it's true just in terms of that energy sort of being contagious and, one side feeds off the other and some players are feeding off other players and feeding off the crowd and all of that. And that whole snowball sort of got going for the Liberty, I think, which is, I feel like when you really see the Liberty at their best this year is when you get that snowball effect, when you get one thing and another thing and another thing, it starts to really get that momentum going. And I think we saw that. But it's like you said, like they were locked in for 40 minutes this game. And we've seen them, they really got dominated pretty well in those first 2 games, but it's not like we didn't see any flashes of them being really locked in. That first
Yeah.
half in game 1, Liberty played pretty well. They were up at halftime, but they hadn't sustained it until this game. And it's an accumulation of those little things. Like you brought up that Laney play. There was a Jonquel Jones play, I think. So in game 2, I don't know if you remember the Asia Wilson up and under where she got Stewie really good. And then she did the same thing in game 3, that same little up and under move, and Jonquel was there on the help side to take that away. It is the same play, but JJ was there. And it's just like that 40-point gap that you make up, you make up 1 or 2 points with that Laney play. You make up 1 or 2 points with the Jonquel play. You make up 2 points here, 2 points there, and you put it all together possession by possession, staying locked in and making those plays on every individual possession, and it adds up throughout the course of the game. You can hit a bunch of singles and all of a sudden you're back in the game and even winning the game compared to where you were at that same point in game 2. And I think that's what the Liberty did.
It's true. And like, I don't like to use this stat to kind of drive a lot of the narrative a lot of the times because sometimes it's not very accurate, but like all Liberty starters were above plus 15 at the end of the game. Like there was nobody, like the bench was in that minus, but all Liberty starters were in the plus, and it just showed how much they were contributing and being able to stay in front, and like nobody was really stopping anything from happening or just kind of letting up. So I thought that was pretty cool. It was like there was like plus 16, plus 17, plus 22 a couple of players were, which I think speaks a lot to how that game went.
Yeah, well, and you're right. Sometimes that stat doesn't mean anything. In this game, I think it absolutely meant a lot. And especially if you look at the first 2 games, the Liberty, all 5 starters were minus 10 or worse in both of those games, which it's only happened 10 times in finals history, and 2 of them were in that game. And
Lovely.
The Aces starters, shout out to Across the Timeline for that, by the way. The Aces starters were all minus 10 in this game. So they totally flipped the script in that regard. Which
Yeah.
obviously if all your starters are plus on one side, they're arguably minus on the other side. But yeah, you're right. It's just really speaks to how they were playing.
Absolutely. And we kind of touched on it a little bit because that home court advantage, it felt like even though, and I was looking at Sabrina Ionescu as one of those players who might feel more comfortable at home. She did only have 9 points. However, I felt like her 3-point shot felt way more comfortable than it did in the first 2 games. And you could see like the emotions, like she was screaming after like big plays. Do you think that's like a little warm up for what's about to happen in game 4 that she's like, "You know what? Like I'm at home. I got some of my like crazy three-point shots in game 3. Now it's really time for me to unleash."
Yeah, I think so. I think she's sort of the quintessential player who fits in that kind of momentum snowball that we talked about, where when that energy gets going, that's when she's at her best. And I mean, she had 11 assists. She played great.
Yeah.
She had 9 points, but she played great. Uh, I I think we're going to continue to see that game four. And I think going back to those defensive matchups, when you talk about Sabrina didn't have to follow Jackie Young around for 40 minutes and guard who at times was the best player on the floor, I think, in those first two games. When you don't have to worry about that as much and expend that energy, that sort of frees you up on the offensive end too. And so I think we saw some of that from Sabrina. And yeah, just all around like really important development for the Liberty to see that. And 9 points is extremely misleading. Like you said, she was back, and we could see that full on explosion coming in game four. It's definitely possible.
Yeah. So if anybody's a betting person out there, actually no, maybe don't take my advice, but it's just I don't know, maybe something to keep an eye on. But yeah, okay. So that's like on the Liberty side. Let's talk a little bit about the Aces side. What did they struggle with in game 3? Because this time Kelsey Plum was the leading scorer. Nobody really came close to her. She finished with 29. Um, what did they struggle with in game 3? Whether that's like what the Liberty made them do or maybe something on their end.
Yeah, obviously, they had a tough time getting Jackie going because of what the Liberty did with those matchups. They struggled to hit shots for the first time in this series. Shot 31% from three, which you can probably factor in some of the home court environment into that. I think the Aces haven't won in that building yet, and they haven't really been that close yet this year out of 3 tries. So they've dominated the Liberty a few times, but they've all been at home for them. And if you another point that Becky brought up, if you listen to the post game pressers, to just that, according to her, they messed up all their screen coverages. She had a funny quote about it. Someone asked her about the different screen coverages they were running, and she just said, "Listen, it doesn't matter whether we were at the level, horizontal, parallel. I think I'm paraphrasing. I'm trying to remember her words, but they were all wrong. We're messing them all up." And so whatever they were supposed to be on any given possession, she wasn't very happy with it, which I'm sure is something that she will be cleaning up heading into game four. That's not something that a team that well coached with that much experience and veteran leadership messes up twice in a row. So
Mm-hmm.
I would expect that to sort of be something that they fix. But yeah, it's again accumulation of a bunch of things that really need sort of the tables turned, and tables need to turn back if the Aces are going to close it out in game four.
Yeah, and I'm sure Becky gave them like very stern talk in the locker room. Like I just love like Becky Hammond. Like this just as an aside, like her personality is so funny. I think like she's one of the most interesting coaches to talk to in post game, pre game media. I think she gives like amazing quotes and like her personality just shines through. And so yeah, no, she's just a fun person. And just kind of like a big reason why this Aces team is just so dominant. And like to be clear, like I'm not expecting this game to go again. I mean, again, it does depend if Chelsea Gray is playing or not, but at the same time, the Aces are still the Aces. So I'm very interested to see what is going to happen in game 4. The big question is, do you think that they can repeat that and force a game 5? Like, are the Liberty going to be able to do the unthinkable here?
I think so, and I hate talking about why, because I think the biggest reason why is just that I'm not sure if Chelsea Gray is going to play, and I hate it. It sucks, but it really does change the complexion of this series. And if she plays, to be clear, if I'm wrong, I think the Aces are fully favored, and I don't think this series goes to game 5. But
Mhm.
if Chelsea Gray doesn't play, you're talking about that domino effect with the bench that we've talked about all season long with the Aces, where they're just one injury away and they have depth issues and they can kind of manage them because their starters are so good. But what happens lose one or two of those starters. And over the offseason, we looked at, okay, they weren't very deep last year. They brought in Candace Parker. They brought in Alicia Clark. Now they have 7 legitimately solid players. Then they lose Candace Parker. Now they're down to really Alicia Clark, who was great all year, 6th Woman of the Year. Now, if Chelsea Gray isn't playing, you're putting Alicia Clark into the starting lineup. You still got 5 starters you can trust, but now what? Are they playing 40 minutes? Are you going to Kirsten Bell, Sid Colson? I love Sid Colson. I'm not sure if Becky was planning on playing her heavy minutes in the finals. Without Chelsea Gray, she's going to be playing some minutes, I'm sure, but you'll probably see Kelsey Plum played 40 minutes last game. I'm sure she'll play 40 again. Probably see Jackie out there for 40 minutes, maybe Asia. So their depth is going to be really tested without Chelsea Gray. And obviously, she runs the show. Asia's the best player, but your point guard runs the show. So, yeah, I definitely think the Liberty, if Chelsea doesn't play, could get it back to Vegas. And who knows in a game 5 again, if Chelsea still isn't back by then, anything could happen. Anything could happen in that game. I think the Liberty would face a tall task even without Chelsea, just going out there in that environment in a winner take all game. But they have an advantage at that point personnel wise. So it could definitely happen. And this could be that series that we talk about for the rest of WNBA history. Every time someone gets down 0-2 in a playoff series, if that happens, we'll be talking about, well, it's happened one time, 2023 Liberty, they're the only team to do it. Maybe we'll be putting an asterisk on it because maybe Chelsea Gray isn't there, which is a huge asterisk. But this could be that series that gets brought up year after year as that one time every time someone goes down 0-2.
I wonder if an argument may be against that. And I'm not saying I disagree. Like I totally agree. I wonder if like an argument made is that the Liberty were still kind of on track to win that game, even with Chelsea Gray in, just based with like all the adjustments they made. But again, like if Chelsea doesn't play in game 4, then like you have no way of knowing if they would have been able to repeat that. Or if it was just like a one-off, they were able to adjust in that game. But yeah, no, I totally agree. It sucks. Like it, and the thing is, this kind of thing happens in sports all the time. Like I'm wearing my Raptors shirt. Like if we're gonna talk about the Raptors, like their championship in 2019, people love to put asterisks on it because of the Warriors team where Katie went down, Klay Thompson went down, and I'm just like, well, okay, all the Raptors players were injured too. But anyway, that's another discussion for another podcast. But I think my overall point being is that it feels like there is always going to be asterisks when something happens that is like outside of the normal expectations of which teams are going to win what and how much. So no, it's definitely interesting, but it seems like just a normal topic in sports discourse. But really hope that Chelsea Gray is okay, like outside of all this. Before we move on to our player of the week, we kind of talked about Stewie last week. So I want to do like a little check-in with her, what you thought of her in game 3, and if it gave you any confidence moving to game 4 of what she can be for the team. I know she had that very, very exciting block on Asia Wilson that I immediately went to Twitter and was like, that is a volleyball block. There is a reason why Stewie is on my all basketball volleyball team. Like the timing on it was incredible. Like I feel like if there was a way to encapsulate the game, it was that play. But no, what did you think of her in game 3 at home?
Yeah, well, that block was amazing. First off, I have to shout out my team. I've made it. What episode is this? Number 9, number 10.
Yeah,
I've made
number
it
9.
like 9 episodes. Granted, we haven't talked about college basketball yet. I've made it 9 episodes without talking about Illinois State, so I think it's time. Kate Bullman, fantastic shot blocker, Illinois State. The coach texted me after that block and was like, "Stewie's looking like Kate Bullman out here with that block," which is no one who's listening knows what that means. But go watch Kate Bullman and then you'll know what I mean. Anyway, I think Stewie, like we still didn't get that sort of vintage, like 35-point type of what we saw, last year in that Storm Aces. I think really a couple times, but in one game in particular in that semifinal series that I'm thinking of. But like we didn't need to. That's the thing on this team is that when you have someone like John Cole Jones, who we're going to get to, putting in 27 points, when you have Benijah Laney playing how she is on Jackie in that matchup, and Sabrina starts knocking down threes, and and she's finding people again. Like Stewie was able to just be her, and really she played, I think, great defense on Chelsea and help side all throughout the game. Uh, Obviously she hit some shots. She didn't need to go off for 30 or 40, but yeah, I think she's back. And she hasn't been the best player on this team in the playoffs or in the finals, and she doesn't need to be. She might need to be if they get to a game 5 on the road. We'll see, because that's your time more than any other time when you need your MVP to step up. But I enjoyed watching Stewie. I'm not gonna lie, that was a fun game for her.
Yeah, like, I felt like a lot of little things too, like, she finished with 20 points, like, there was that one play at the beginning in the first half where, Sab passed it to her and she was able to finish, right there with the layup. I just think it was little things like that that maybe starts to get some of her confidence back. I know a lot of it has been weird, like, three-point shooting, and her three's not really going in, and so it's just kind of like, "Okay, well, how do you work around that now and kind of make some adjustments?" Because she can score in other ways. Like, I don't think, like, Stewie needs to rely on her three-point shooting. And so I think I saw like little flashes of that in game 3. And hopefully, like, again, like we talked about with Sabrina too, like maybe they're all just a little bit more comfortable in game 4 now that they've had that one win at home. So yeah, very interested to see what happens in game 4. I really, really want that game 5 just for, being greedy for more basketball. I don't think I'm like completely ready to part with the WNBA season just yet. So that's definitely another reason. But yeah,
Well,
I know
yeah,
we're both hoping for that game 5.
I mean, as you know, as a basketball fan, definitely. And also, these teams still haven't really played a close game yet. And I mean, maybe game 4 is that, but it would be, I don't know if poetic is the word. It would feel, just something would be sort of right about it if somehow these teams play like 15 straight blowouts and half of them go each way, which makes no sense. And then they get to game 5 and finally have that down to the wire, some type of reader, to for someone to win the finals. I think that would be pretty cool. Whoever it is, like, just I would love to see one close game, and game 5 feels like that's the moment, if it's going to happen, where we get it.
It's true, and I've, like, brought it before, I brought it up before on this podcast, I think, like, even before the series started where, again, I'm going back to the Raptors in 2019, but their semifinal series against the 76ers, every single game was a blowout until game 7, and nobody had any idea who was gonna win, and then it came down to that final Kawhi buzzer beater, like, literally the greatest moment of my life. I think I was happier with that buzzer beater than the actual championship, but that's another thing. But it was just so crazy. So like, yeah, like I think something that kind of parallels that would be pretty awesome. And that's the first thing obviously that I think of, being from. I just want to know, like, if podcast listeners don't know, like, I am from Toronto, Canada. I am Canadian. Like, I feel like there might be some people who maybe don't know me who are like, why does she always bring up the Raptors? But yeah, let's just make that clear. But anyway, okay. Game 4 is set for Wednesday when you are listening to this podcast. So make sure you go and tune into that. Moving on to our player of the week. If I had a drum roll, I would do a drum roll, but Cal kind of spoiled it
Can you
like
hear it?
5 minutes ago.
Can you hear this through my mic? Is it coming through?
I can hear it. Yeah.
Okay,
And
I don't know if they
our
can hear it,
player of
but
the
I'm doing it.
week is Jonquel Jones. Woo, okay. She has been phenomenal. She had 27 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 blocks, 2 steals in game 3, leading the Liberty to that win. She's been phenomenal the entire playoffs. Like, I think I went on SNY after the game and I was like, if you had like a playoff MVP, like outside of finals MVP, like the entire playoffs MVP, I feel like that would be Jonquel Jones for Liberty because they would not be in this situation without her. Like, you look at that Mystic series, you look at that series against the Sun, like she was the factor. Like, she was the reason they got out of those series. And if they're able to pull off the most incredible comeback ever, she is going to be a big, big reason why that happens. But yeah, what did you think about her performance in game 3, but also overall?
Yeah, I mean, what stood out to me, she played 40 minutes. Because in those first 2 games, she was absolutely dominant for 20 minutes. And then in the second half, they kind of took her out of the game. Now in game two, obviously that was because they switched. They came out of the second half with Asia guarding her, and they had Kia Stokes on her before that.
Mhm.
And Asia's going to take anyone out of the game, so it makes sense. But we really saw, I think, Jonquil finally exert herself, start to finish. Like you said, 27, and I don't even know what the rest of her line was. A million rebounds,
8
4
rebounds,
threes,
3 assists, 3 blocks,
four
2 steals.
55 of everything, 55 points, 55. And the three that you put up there was, I think, so it wasn't quite a career high. She's had 5 threes a couple times in 2018. It was tied for a season high, most that she's had in 5 years, 4 for 7 from 3, and that's huge. That's when you're
Mhm.
doing, because we've seen Jonquil, obviously she can knock down the three, but usually she's good for 1, maybe 2 a game. We've seen her since the All-Star break sort of re-exert her dominance on the block. She's been a load to box out. She's been flying around in this series blocking shots on help side. When you put all of that package into someone who's also going to step out and hit 4 threes in a game, what do you do? Like, Becky Hammon's probably not sleeping this week trying to think about how to stop that, because Jonquil has been, if it's possible, better than she was post All-Star break. I think we were talking about how good she was post All-Star break and how much she turned it on late in the season, which helped the Liberty really turn it on late in the season. I think she's been even better than that in the playoffs and in this series in particular, especially for 4 of those 6 quarters where they had absolutely no answer for her. She might even be better in this series than she was in 2021 in the regular season when she won the MVP. I it's hard to say that she was so good in 2021, but this might be the peak Jonquil that we've seen across her entire career for this last week or two, which is just amazing to watch unfold before our eyes after how she started the season with that stress fracture, coming out so slow to be where she is now. I know she has told Miles Ehrlich how proud she is of herself, and she should be. Any Liberty fan should be proud of her. She is really carrying the team right now.
Absolutely. I fully agree with everything you said. I think she is playing her absolute best basketball when it matters. Like she has been phenomenal in the playoffs, phenomenal in this series. And we know it, like I know like the Liberty game plan a lot of times is, well, we'll just pass it to Jonquil in the paint and kind of let her figure it out because she can muscle her way in. But now you have that versatility where like she's not only doing that, like she's literally stepping into these threes with so much confidence and she is knocking them down. So like you said, like at that point, what do you do? Like there's only so much you can do to actually game plan for her when she is at this level. So just incredible. I mean, yeah, her stat. I'm gonna say her stat line again in game 3 because like I just think it's amazing.
Yes, do it again.
27
How many
points.
assists did she have?
She had 3 assists, so not very high, but 27 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 blocks, 2 steals.
Well, I was gonna say for her though, when she's drawing doubles, I mean 3 assists. I think that's a big deal. I think because they have shooters all around her, and if she's gonna be able to pass out of that, like yeah, 3 isn't like, it's not like she was Sabrina out here dropping 11, but
Yeah.
I
Can you
I,
imagine if
I
that happened? Oh my god.
that might be coming. That might be coming. We might get a quadruple double with blocks and assists before this series is done. Why
Oh,
not?
there you go. There's your hot take of the podcast. No, I actually gotta find that clip of like 55 burgers, 55 hot dogs, whatever. It's Mark's fault
That's
that I
that's
now
that's her
know.
stat line. Yeah, we need that
Yeah.
clip is her stat line. We need to put it in.
Yeah, we do. But yeah, just flip last thing before we wrap this up, flipping the script. We talked about Jackie Young potentially being finals MVP if the Aces win. But if the Liberty pulls this out, does Jonquil get finals MVP?
There's no question. I mean, we got 2 games to go if the Liberty pull it out, right? That means we got 2
Yes.
more
Big
games, and
if. Big if. Yeah.
big if. But if the Liberty pull it out, who knows what happens in those last 2 games? Who knows if we get one of those vintage Stewie games, or if Benaja Laney starts popping off like we saw in the semis. But to me, right now, there's no question. If you were voting for a Liberty Finals MVP right now from that team, if it's not unanimous, someone's doing it wrong because it's John Quell by a landslide. And I I just think if they are going to pull it out, like I said, they got 2 games left, so who knows, someone could step up. But at the same time, I don't think they are going to pull it out without Jonquil continuing to play this way, because that's the biggest reason why they're here, and that's such a big factor in it. So, yeah, if they do pull it out, I think it's got to be her, and I think it will be her in that case.
Yeah, totally agree. All right, make sure you guys let us know who you think will be Finals MVP, who you think will win the WNBA Finals, if the Aces are going to wrap it up in 4, or if the Liberty do the thing and force a game 5. We will see you next Wednesday. Make sure you're tuning in to Her Hoop Stats playoff coverage throughout the entire week. You can find us on social media at Her Hoop Stats, myself at Crina MM. You can find Calvin at Wetzel 31. And yeah, we will see you on Coast to Coast next week.